You're listening to the SoleStrategies podcast with your host, Z. Cohen Sanchez. We hope you enjoy the latest episode and thanks for tuning in. Hello, everybody. It's been a week. I'm just going to make sure that everything is working here okay while we wait for some folks to jump on. But really, what a week this has been. Also, that's much better in terms of lighting. Well, actually, no. Lighting here is not the best. Hold on one second. Sorry, guys. I don't know why my lighting is not doing super hot right now, but that's okay. Oh, okay. I guess the closer I go, the better it is. Excellent. So, again, I'm just going to wait, guys, a couple of minutes just to let some folks jump on here. I did want to say that, if you're jumping on, thanks. I know that this has been really like a never-ending week, to be honest. Since, basically since Monday or Tuesday, it's felt really stressful, never ending, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about if this was a win for the Democratic Party, and I have my own opinions on that. We have our company's positions on that, but I want to jump on the live to get other people's perspectives on what actually just happened. It's, as I said, it's been a really long and stressful week. And so I just wanted to connect with our audience to see how you guys are all feeling about that. So if you are tuning in right now, definitely let me know that you're on. I always love to just, feel like I'm not just sort of talking to myself here, although sometimes that's okay. So, I'm going to start this live with a story. And so don't mind me, but I think that it's really important to talk about my involvement in the primary process, how that looked, why that mattered. So for those of you guys who don't know, I've done a lot of work for Bernie. A lot of work. Pretty close to, I would say, 7 years of work. I've known about Bernie for a really long time. I was really, really supportive in the early stages of him running. And so, one of the poignant moments, I think, for me, and the story I want to tell you guys is about when I raised money in February of this year, right before COVID hit. And I raised about $2,000 because I wanted to take a group of folks with me up to Reno, Nevada. And people ask me, why did I choose Reno specifically? And my answer to that is that I lived in Las Vegas for almost 2 years. I have a lot of family in Las Vegas. I'm very familiar with the area. My grandparents lived there. My aunt, grew up there. We visited Las Vegas a lot when I was a kid growing up. As I said, that's where my grandparents were from. That's where my aunt's from, my cousins. And so, knowing a little bit about Nevada and how Nevada is, it was really important to me, specifically to get working class folks out there to vote. It was something that I knew I needed to do. I know I could have gone to California. I could have gone, to other places. But to me, it was really important that I went to Nevada and worked with folks out there, particularly in a spot like Reno that, there are a lot of disenfranchised voters out in Nevada. And, it's not just Las Vegas and Reno. There are a lot of different parts of it, a lot of rural parts. And, read some stories about Bernie supporters out there and their work out there. And it's really, really inspiring, specifically in the rural areas. But the reason why I chose Reno is because I knew that it had a very large Hispanic population and that we really needed to get those folks out there to vote. And their voting records in the past had been very, very low. And so I thought, it would be a great opportunity to be able to go out there, even for just a couple of days, and get those doors knocked so that we could have a really successful caucus. So for those of you guys who don't know, Nevada has a caucus, and they don't vote in person. The caucus process is really cool. I don't know how I feel about it. in general, in terms I mean, maybe not even fairness isn't the right word, but the caucuses are really awesome. And the reason why I find the caucus so awesome is because it's really about a community conversation, right? It's not just you going to, your local school or your gym, wherever it is that you vote, and filling out a little bubble and voting. It's more about really having community connection. And so I had never been a part of an actual caucus, at least not in a room. I had done remote work before in places like Iowa and other states that had caucuses, but I hadn't actually been in a caucus room before. And so I wanted to have that experience, and I wanted other people to have that experience too. And so going into it, I live, for those of you guys who don't know, in Portland, Oregon, and I was lucky enough to have about 14 of my friends that said, hell yeah, let's take a road trip up to Reno and work for the campaign for the last couple days. And so folks from all walks of life came up with me. We got a 12 passenger van and we overfilled it. And I went up with people like Paige Kreisman, who challenged Rob Noest for the state house race here in Portland and did very, very well. Love Paige so much. I went up with people from my union. I work for the nurses union, so I had people from my union that came with me. I had folks that I've done organizing work with here in Portland, and we all came together. We got in this van and we left on very late on either Wednesday or Thursday night, and got up to the campaign office in Reno. We got a big Airbnb. It was super cool. It was so exciting, and we spent 2 days, or at least 1 day, maybe 2 days. I think we did 2 days of just door knocking, right? And so we went out, we went to the campaign office. It was awesome. We got to meet the staff. We were putting together clipboards, we were putting together materials, and we were out there and we were hitting the streets. And it was really interesting because I was having conversations with volunteers, which, by the way, they had multiple offices in Reno, but the office that we were at, a friend of mine was actually staff there. And so we were, spending a lot of time in the office, doing a lot of office-based work, and I was having a lot of conversations with volunteers about how they thought it would go, and, what they were hearing at the doors and all of these other things. And, people were mostly telling me, a lot of people want to vote for Bernie. They don't know that he can win, but they really want to vote for him. And so when I was asking them what their predictions were, they were like, well, we think we'll do okay, but, our strong states are not places like, Nevada necessarily. So we think that we'll do pretty well. We'll definitely hold our ground, but in terms of winning, not really sure. And so I sort of took that and I was like, all right, well, that's interesting, because the doors that I was knocking, I was getting a lot of folks that were really, really excited about Bernie, particularly about his eliminating college debt plan, also about raising the minimum wage. A lot of folks were talking about the effects of climate change and them being scared about that and what that would look like for their own kids and for the next generation. And they thought that Bernie had the most solid plan to deal with the climate crisis. And so, we got up super early Saturday morning for the caucus. Again, I really wasn't expecting much. I was hoping that we would do well. I knew that we had put the work in, for absolute sure. And so we got to the caucus, as I said, there were 14 of us. So we were split up. We were all caucus captains, but we were split up pretty much all across Reno. And so we were all texting each other and letting each other know what was going on. The Democratic Party was really sort of giving me a real good runaround. I was being threatened to be thrown out of the caucus because I was engaging with people about who they were voting for, which, by the way, you're allowed to do. And that's actually the whole point of the caucus, is to be engaging with the community. And I had some woman that was, trying to kick me out of the caucus, and I had other people that were experiencing the same thing. And I have to shout out Bernie's campaign, because they were so much more prepared than we were in 2016. I mean, they had a caucus line, which basically was a line that, you know, as caucus captains, we could dial into that line if we thought that something illegal was happening, if somebody was telling us something that we didn't think was accurate, and somebody, you know, on national staff would basically respond to that. And so I had to call the caucus line a couple of times for different things that were happening, but overall it was a really awesome process. Like, people were just really, really responsive. And so that day, you know, people were sort of trickling in the morning. I was talking to people in line. I was canvassing them as they were going in, talking to them about what was important to them. And I start to notice that every person I'm talking to is voting for Bernie. I mean, and I'm thinking to myself, this has to be wrong. Like, they're just telling me this because, you know, I mean, every canvasser goes through this, right? Like, you go up to somebody, you have a conversation, and you know they're actually not voting for that person. They just don't want to talk to you anymore, and so they're just going to tell you what you want to hear so that effectively you go away. And so I just thought that that was what was happening to me, and I was like, okay, whatever. You know, whatever, essentially. People are going to do what they do. And so when we actually got into the caucus process, and it's really interesting, guys, for those of you guys who have never been in a caucus. So the way that they do it in Nevada is that they have everybody essentially comes into the room. So it's like a gym usually. They have a cutoff time. So the cutoff time, I believe, for the caucus was like somewhere around 10 or 11 a.m. And after that point, you're basically locked in the room. You can't go in and you can't go out. If you leave the caucus area, then you don't get to participate in the caucus. You have to stay throughout the whole process. And so, you know, everybody was sort of sitting in the gym, you know, sitting in the bleachers, waiting for the caucus caller, I guess you could call them, the person from the party, to come up and announce the person's name, the candidate's name. And then what they did was they asked people to then go into a corner so that they could count those people from the precinct. So in this particular gym that I was in, it was made up of about 4 precincts, maybe 5 precincts. And so there was, you know, people from precinct A over here, people from precinct B over here, people from C, et cetera, et cetera. And so when the Democratic Party came up and asked, the first person that they mentioned was Pete Buttigieg. And they were like, please stand up if you are caucusing here for Pete Buttigieg. And I think 2 people stood up. And by the way, there was about, I would say total in the gym, there was probably maybe 500 or so people, maybe less than that, maybe between 350 and 500, I would say. That's just like an estimate. And with each precinct, some precincts were really small. So some precincts only had like 2 or 3 people. Others had hundreds. So the one that I was observing had about 150 people in it, out of the 4 or 5 precincts in the room. So, you know, in my particular precinct that I was observing, we had 2 people out of the 100 stand up for Pete Buttigieg. And I was like, okay, cool. And then they went on to Joe Biden, and one person in the entire gym out of every single precinct stood up. One person, one lady. And yeah, and she was very vocal. It was actually pretty funny. But everybody was just sort of looking at her like, I don't know why Joe Biden's even still in the race at this point, because he had lost so horribly in Iowa and in New Hampshire. And so it was kind of funny to watch that process. And then when they announced Bernie's name, about 95 out of 100 people stood up in the bleachers. And guys, it was a moment that I don't think I'll ever forget it. It was like everybody just sort of looked around like, do we all agree on, like, is this like everybody, like, we're all in agreement that it's Bernie Sanders right now? And, you know, the person that was running the caucus was like, everybody sit down, too many people, we can't have you guys all, you know, go into one corner because it's just too many people. So we're just going to record it as Bernie Sanders has won this precinct. And so it was just such an incredible moment. Out of my gym, I think that the only precinct that Bernie didn't win was the precinct where there was 2 people in it. I think it was a mother-daughter, if I can remember correctly, but they were definitely family for sure. I don't know if it was a mother or daughter or not, but essentially one of them voted for Bernie and the other one voted for Elizabeth, and then they had to do a coin flip for who was going to win the precinct, which was really weird, and it ended up going to Elizabeth Warren. So whatever. I mean, I don't even really count that. And it was kind of funny because I remember I said either it was her daughter or somebody in her family was like, why? Like, it's, and it was kind of a funny process to watch. But so why am I telling you guys that story? So, in a place that is, Reno to me is one of the most working class. I mean, one of the places in this country that could really does represent the working class of this country. And I've traveled all over this country, working in working class communities, and to me, Reno really sort of represents that. And so I don't think that Bernie was at all a fluke. I don't think it was a fluke that 95 people stood up that day. And I don't think that it was a fluke that Bernie won Nevada by as much as he did. I don't. And, if we look at the map of where Bernie won and we overlay that with where Joe Biden and the centrists do poorly, that's also something that we need to be paying attention to. And, specific places like Nebraska, right? Like Maine, like Michigan, all of these places, Bernie did exceptionally well, right? Idaho, Utah, Alaska, Wyoming, Wisconsin. All of these working class, particularly the Rust Belt states, is really where Bernie shines. And it's interesting because those states, particularly, were either very close for Biden or Trump won, right? So looking at the places that, Trump won is really, really concerning. There's a couple of things that were concerning to me about this race. One of them is that it was way too close. I don't believe anybody that tells me that if Bernie Sanders was the nominee for the Democratic Party, that we would have won this in a landslide. I know that that's the case. And I know that that's the case, again, because if you overlay the map with the places that Joe Biden struggled in, most of those are Rust Belt states. Most of those are states that the working class feel disenfranchised. Most of those states have, not excellent voting methods, and so they do things like they close polls and they have voter disenfranchisement and voter suppression, and so none of this is shocking to me whatsoever. I mean, I knew going into this that if Joe Biden was the nominee, that this was going to be a very close election, and we all saw that. We all saw that it could have very easily gone to Trump, right? Thank God for the mail-ins. I really am, thankful for places like Georgia. But, I also know that places that were close, like Wisconsin, like Georgia, like Pennsylvania, would have gone for Bernie in a landslide. And so why are we talking about this? So, if you ask my personal opinion, and this is just me, Z, talking, this is not me, Z, as the director of SoleStrategies or anything like that. I'm just going to be totally upfront with you guys as the person that I am. I don't think that this is a win for the Democrats. In fact, I think that this should be an eye-opener for the Democrats, that if we don't organize our communities in the next 4 years, we will absolutely end up in this place again. And sure, it might not be Trump, but let me tell you that there are plenty of Trump folks out there, and there are plenty of them that are going to want to run for office. And I'm just letting you know now that if we think that, as AOC said, if we just all think we're going back to brunch, we're going to have a real tough time in the next 4 years in this country. I'm with y'all. I celebrated too. I'm so glad that we have now at least a person that has some type of integrity. I disagree with Joe Biden on 95% of what he thinks is right. I think it's absolutely disgusting that he can get up on stage right now and talk about how fracking is okay and how it's good and how we should encourage it. I completely disagree with him on student loans. I think that student loans are predatory, and I think that people need to have those loans canceled in order to actually make a life for themselves. I disagree with him as I said, pretty much everything except for the minimum wage. I really respect Joe Biden that he is going to do something about the minimum wage, particularly in states like the South, where minimum wage is atrocious and hasn't gone up. So, there's just a lot of work is what I'm trying to tell you guys, is that What I fear is that everybody's going to go back to sleep. And I'm here to let you know that we are not going back to sleep. Not here at SoleStrategies, not me personally, and not anybody on my staff, and not any candidate that we're working with. So for those of you guys who don't know, our signature program is our Kickstart fundraising program. This cycle of candidates, this cohort that we're working with now, we have 12 amazing candidates from all over the country. And these folks are all, as I said, we only work with no corporate money candidates. These people are stepping up for their community to talk about, why, to really sort of question the incumbents and to talk about the issues that actually matter and to fight for the working class. And it's been so inspiring to see these candidates, to hear their why, to hear their story, to hear how they've struggled, how their families have struggled, and what they're going to do to solve that. And it's been truly, I'm not a religious person, but for lack of a better word, a blessing, to be able to work with these folks and to get them on the right track so that they're not worried about fundraising 3 months before their election, like a lot of us progressives are, because fundraising is such a huge issue for a lot of us because we're relying on grassroots. We're relying on the grassroots. We're relying on the small dollars. We don't have people like Joe Biden has in his back pocket. We don't have the corporations that are going to sponsor us because they don't agree with us. And that's okay because our candidates don't need corporate money and they don't want corporate money. And so my challenge to you is that if you are thinking about running for office, now is the time. 1.5 years, 2 years before you run is the time to make that happen. And I am saying that to put pressure on you because the work begins yesterday. This is the time that we need to organize our communities. This is the time that we need to be having tough conversations. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that is if we get adequate representation, and not just in federal positions, but in local positions. At SoleStrategies, we really believe in the power of local politics. School board positions, city council positions. These are all positions that make serious decisions that affect the community directly. And so to ignore those positions and only vote for president once every 4 years is not good enough. It's just not good enough. It's just not. We need to be involved every single step of the way. Jeremy also said he refuses to look at Medicare for All despite it being statistically popular issue by a long shot. Exactly. Listen, guys, on Fox News the other day, I saw a tweet go out not so long ago, maybe yesterday, that 72% of people that watch Fox News support Medicare for All. So if we're talking about what the most popular positions are, then, Medicare for All should be on every single Democrat's ticket, every Democrat's platform, and it's not. And so we really need to talk about why that is, and we need to question the people that are funding these people. SoleStrategies, we are fundraisers. That's what we do. And so we take the money that you're taking very, very seriously. And by the way, we are watching. We watch all of the incumbents. We see where they're getting their money from. We follow Open Secrets. We follow all of these websites where we can see and track where the money's coming from. And let me tell you guys, for those of you guys who are not doing that, it is not good and it is getting worse. Even 5-10 years ago, we weren't seeing nearly as much corporate money coming in and out of campaigns as we're seeing today. And so what that tells us is that we need more working folks like you to step up and run. So please let us know if you are thinking about this. No pressure at all. Like we're not going to tell you to run for a certain seat that you don't want to run for. We're not going to pressure you, but we want to have a conversation with you because these things really do matter. And as I said, the work starts right now. The work starts for the 2021 races. For those of you guys who think we're in an off election year, there really is no off election year. In 2021, we have mayoral seats all over the country that are up for re-election. We have city council seats all over the country. I believe that 33 seats out of 60 city council seats are up for re-election in New York City next year in 2021. These are all seats that we need to be taking very, very seriously because, again, we need to follow Bernie Sanders' lead. If we are going to make change takes place from the bottom up, not from the top down. And so we need to be doing that. So our next Kickstart cohort, if you're starting your campaign and you're ready to raise money for that campaign, our next Kickstart cohort is going to be starting on December 10th. And running through January 10th. And guys, this is a life-changing program. This is a transformational program. The folks that we bring in have no fundraising experience. Most of them have never run a campaign before, and we help them not just set up their campaign and their foundation, but we help them every single step of the way. We help them raise that initial money. We help them get in touch with their, with people that they're going to hire to be on their staff. We do a lot of that groundwork so that it's easy on working class folks to make this happen. And somebody said, of course they won. Quit whining. I don't know what that means, but if you want to clarify, please clarify. It's not, and if your comment is quit whining because they won, I don't think that's good enough. I'm sorry. If we want to end up here again in 4 years, guys, that's fine. I mean, we can do that. But if we want to change this country, then we need to do something about it now. And the reality is that I want you all to go out today or tomorrow, if you can't go out today because of COVID related things. But one day this week, I want you to go out and I want you to thank a working class woman of color, because working class women of color delivered this win for the Democrats. And don't let anybody tell you anything otherwise. That's exactly what happened. People should be going out and thanking Stacey Abrams, because guess what? If I don't agree with Stacey Abrams on every single issue, but the reality was that she went out and she registered folks. And that's exactly what we need to be doing as progressives. So guess what? I am completely on her side, and I'm going to support her every single step of the way, because that is how we build working class power in this country, is that we need to bring new people into the process. And if we keep going on this trajectory of letting old people vote because, we don't need young people to vote because old people are the only ones that vote. Bullshit. I'm sorry, but young people also delivered this victory for the Democrats. And guess what? A lot of them were really unhappy about it, but they went out and they voted. And guess what, guys? That's not going to happen forever, because eventually they're going to get sick of that strategy. And so if you want young people to come out, if you want working class women of color to come out, if you want these organizers to come out and vote for a campaign, then we need to do something about getting people into these positions that are going to actually represent their best interests. Because the fact that Joe Biden won, I don't think was because of Joe Biden at all. I think it was because people were terrified of Trump. And that doesn't work every single time, because guess what? People were afraid of Trump in 2016 and Trump won because people were not willing to vote for Hillary Clinton. And if the centrists think that they can just keep repeating the same process over and over again, what's going to end up happening is that eventually we're going to have a dictator that we can't get out. And I'm really, really excited that Trump is going to be out. I don't know if he's going to be stepping down yet. I mean, that whole process is yet to come. But saying that, we're whining because we're thinking about the long-term strategy isn't okay. Because guess what? All we have, guys, is the long-term strategy now. We're not going back to brunch. We're not going back to sleep. This is a new day in America. People are waking up today. And so, what you can do as a Democrat, even if you're a centrist, is support those folks. Because guess what? You're not going to win just with the centrist crowd. It's not going to work anymore. The progressives are up, they're here, and they were willing to do a favor to make sure that Trump is out of office. And we're all so excited that he's gone. Thank God that he's out. But again, this can only work so many times. So please, this week, go thank a working class woman of color for the work that they did. Go thank the person that was registering new voters. Thank the people that were out there knocking doors for Bernie Sanders, because guess what? They went and they knocked doors for Joe Biden too. A lot of those folks, even though they really, really, really didn't want to, because they knew that their best interests were not going to be met with Joe Biden, but they did it anyway. And so please thank those people, and encourage them to keep going and to keep working for the people that they do care about. And guess what? We have so many open seats. 2021, 2022, we have so many open seats, and we're going to take back everything. This is the time for progressives to step up and do the work that we've set out to do. And we need to thank Bernie Sanders for that. We need to thank AOC for that. We need to thank Ilhan Omar for that, Ayanna Pressley, all of these people that are stepping up and saying enough is enough. We have to thank those people for that, because without them, we wouldn't have a structure to move forward. But guess what, guys? We have a structure, we have a trajectory, we have a path, and now our job is to go and fulfill that. So please continue to register new voters. Right? This is how we stop disenfranchising folks. Continue to register people, continue to talk about the issues, continue to talk about Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, all of these things, and it's going to pay off in the long run. Because guess what? 2024, guys, that's going to be our year. And if you're not following some of these people, you know, I want you to go out and I want you to give money to your local progressive candidates, because they're out there fighting the big fight for you. And so get behind them, give them a donation, offer to knock doors for them, offer to register voters for them. But please, I'm begging you all to not go back to sleep, because as I said, unless you want to end up in 4 years from now in the same position, it is our time to take back over and take our party back. The Democrats have always, well, should have been the working class party of this country. That's what we set out to be. We are the Democratic Party was always meant to be the working class people's party, and it is not anymore. And so we need to return to our roots. Our roots is working class. Our roots is FDR. Our roots are those people. And so we can't just keep saying that the corporations control everything, because guess what? A lot of people are not seeing the difference anymore between the Democratic Party and the Republicans. And we need to change that, and we're going to. I know that you are. I know that you're thinking right now that there's a seat that you could run for, is there's a progressive in your area that you could support. So go out there and make that happen. All right, guys, enough on my rant. But you know, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this, because I know that today is a new day for us, and that we are going to go forward stronger than we ever have before. So don't lose hope. Celebrate the win that we have had. Celebrate Biden's win, but don't go back to sleep. All right, guys, I'm signing off now, but I'm excited, and I will catch up with y'all again next week. Have a good week.